Hey everybody, so there are certain key questions that people always ask about nutrition, especially, that all kind of go together. And what I want to do in this video is really shed some light from a bird's eye view and answer some of your questions and show you how some of these questions all work together. And I think this is kind of the flashlight in the dark room that a lot of you are going to need to really better understand your meal planning and your exercise prescription as well. So let me dive right in with this. The aggregate of most studies show that most people, and I'm saying most, not everybody, but most people benefit in their health and longevity from getting about 25 to 29 grams of fiber per day. Okay, that's just a general catch-all spectrum is 25 to 29. And that happens by generally getting around 7 servings of fruits and or vegetables in a day. A combination is usually better. So what happens a lot then is we'll put together someone's macros. I'll explain those in just a second. But when we put together someone's macros and we're telling them you need to get 7 servings of fruits and vegetables each day, which is going to help you get 25 to 29 grams of fiber, what ends up happening is there's a big disconnect because when we try to get all that fruit and vegetable, we are now disrupting our macros. All right, so you're asking, well, what is a macro? Okay, so macros are the amounts of carbohydrate per day that you should get. It's not the type. We're not going to tell you what type to get, but the amounts of total carbs and the amounts of total protein and total fat. And when it comes to fruits and vegetables, we're often dealing with carbohydrate. There's still some protein and some fat, but for the most part, we're usually dealing with carbohydrate. So what ends up happening is we'll do the math clinically. So like a health coach or a personal trainer will do the math and figure out what your macros need to be to get you to a good, healthy body composition and good, healthy energy levels and homeostasis and all the other things that you want for longevity and health and wellness. We're going to put together macros, and you're going to find that, well, there's no way I can fit in all the fiber and the fruits and vegetables each day and still stay within that carbohydrate limit, right? And I'll give you a roundabout number. For a lot of people, depending on different goals and body sizes and gender and everything else, the thing we're usually looking at is carbohydrates usually are going to be about 100 to 200. Somewhere in there is a pretty common range for most people. And so if we tell you, let's say 140, and then we tell you to get 7 servings of fruits and vegetables, the big challenge is that, well, that's tough to do. Fruits are usually at least 20 or more grams of carbohydrates. A lot of vegetables can be too. And then, of course, you're usually going to get carbs from other sources too. If you want any cream in your coffee, if you have a little bit of bread, anything else outside of the fruit and vegetable world, even dairy and such is going to have carbohydrates usually. So you just start getting into this problem where it's like, I can't really get all the fiber that I need and all the fruits and the vegetables that I need without going over on my carbohydrate allotment each day, okay? And then if you go over, well, then yeah, you've got your fruits and vegetables, you've gotten your fiber, you've gotten all that. However, now you're straying from that carbohydrate limitation, and that's going to hurt you in terms of your body composition because you're consuming more carbohydrate, more total calories than what you're burning off and what your body actually needs to reach your goals. So it just becomes this vicious circle for most people. And they end up pulling their hair out and saying, how can this be natural? How can this be right if we can't put it together, if the math doesn't line up? And I want to give you the answer. That's the point of this video, is I want you to understand why that is that we simply don't move enough. And when I say move, I don't just mean light walking, guys. I don't mean like a casual stroll around the block. I'm talking about real movement, using all of your limbs to a big degree, using your joints to pretty much their full range of motion or close to that, using major muscles in rhythm, okay? Almost no one does that. Even people that work out regularly, even those of us who'll train for an hour, hour and a half a day, keep in mind, that's only a small percentage of the day. Most of the day, we're still sedentary, right? Most of us are sitting at desks like this one, in rooms like this where we're comfy and not really moving around much. So what I'm getting at is this: if you really want to understand how far most of our lives are from what nature really intended for us, here's the bottom line. And with this knowledge, you're going to have power. You're going to have the ability to start working with your coach and tweaking and coming up with the decisions that are going to be right for you moving forward so you can take charge of your health even better than you already are. So here's the bottom line. If we moved a lot more using our major muscles, big movements like I described, if we do more of that, your carbohydrate need comes way up. Instead of, say, 130 or 140, it's going to be more like 200, 250, maybe 300 or more, because you're moving your body a whole lot more. You're putting greater physical demand. There's more need for energy coming in because you've got so much energy coming out. So therefore, it bumps up your carbohydrate allotment each day. You actually should have more than you would be otherwise. And therefore, you can get the fiber that nature seems to want us to get, about 25 to 29 grams. You can get the carbohydrate from fruit and vegetables because, again, you're moving so much that it makes sense. So you see, if it ever looks like nature's almost working against you because your carbohydrate allotment is so small, when you do the math, you work with a personal trainer or a health coach, and you're finding, oh, how can I fit all this in here? It's because that allotment that we're giving you is tailored to the lifestyle that most of us have, where we're sitting in desks and we're not really all that metabolic and all that active. So the simple answer is, well, we need to make you more active. We need to give you the kind of movements that allow for more carbohydrate intake so you can get the fiber, the fruits, the vegetables, and all the phytochemicals and everything that you need for brain health, heart health, etc. I hope I'm making sense. So we're going to finish this video off with, well, what exactly does that look like? Let me give you a little idea of how many total minutes of conditioning you would get each week if you can free up this kind of time in your life, okay? So we know that statistically about 150 to 180 minutes, pretty much 3 hours a week, is pretty optimal when it comes to conditioning your heart. Now, I'm only talking about cardiovascular work there. I'm not talking about strength training or any myofascial release work or anything else. Flexibility training, I'm talking about just cardiovascular work, okay? And again, that should be using your major limbs. I'm not talking about a stroller on the block. I'm not talking about anything casual or anything light. It's usually going to be to a point where you couldn't sing because your heart rate and your breathing rate are elevated enough to where you couldn't sing, and where you generally even have a little bit of trouble talking. Maybe you can get out 5 to 10 words, but you couldn't get out a really long sentence because you've got that shortness of breath from your effort, okay? Now, keep in mind, this is a guideline. That's not for everybody. There are some people with COPD and other kind of issues where that's not appropriate, or at least it's not appropriate at the beginning of your program. So please keep that in mind, too. There's a lot of specifics that go into all this. But what I'm getting at is if you create a lifestyle where you're getting that 150 to 180 minutes of cardio, and then on top of that, if you're strength training all your major muscles, roughly 5 to 20 or even 30 sets per muscle group per week. It's a lot of work. You're usually going to be training 2, 3, maybe 4 hours or more of strength training each week as well. If you put all that together, you're going to give your joints, you're going to give your muscles, connective tissue, your brain, your heart, your blood vessels, you're going to give them the conditioning that they want to improve your longevity, to keep you out of the hospital, to keep you off medications as you get older, to really make you a lot more optimal and a bit more bulletproof to common medical problems. All right. And so hopefully this all makes sense. That's what nature seems to have intended for us, is to have that kind of time involved. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, well, that's not realistic. I'm a parent, I work 2 jobs, things like that. Certainly, but you want to think about where you can make time to get closer to those numbers. Because again, by getting closer to those numbers, like I said, you're going to get the carbohydrates, the fruit, the vegetables, the phytochemicals, the fiber, everything that you need without gaining body fat. And that's where most people are going wrong. If they're getting all that stuff, they're gaining body fat, or if they're keeping their body composition in check, oftentimes we're not getting the fiber, the phytochemicals, the carbs, the fruits, etc. So again, this is kind of the healthy balance that I think most people don't understand, and that I'd suggest you strive towards. So anyway, if you have questions about this video, if you want to talk more in depth about your own personal metrics, get in touch with me anytime. As always, guys, I'm always here to help, okay? Have a great one.